I would like to go down memory lane and reminisce about my gaming history to go back as far as I can remember. And you can guess what my first gaming and console experience was. First off, put your first gaming experiences in the comments. I would love to read them. Anyways, my first gaming experience was a Nintendo 64. Oh, you thought I was going to say the Gay Station, or I mean the PlayStation 2. Nah, it was the Nintendo 64. I hear the PlayStation 2 was a lot of people's first OG and favorite console of all time. I think I'm in the minority here because it wasn't for me. But anyways, I would like to go over what games I played on the Nintendo 64 and which were my favorites. The very first game I remember playing was GoldenEye 007. I think that might have been the first game I ever played in my life. And for that, 007 has a special place in my heart. It was also the first-person shooter game. The very first-person shooter game I ever played. Some other games I was into at the time were Perfect Dark, another first-person shooter game, and Conker's Bad Fur Day. I really liked Perfect Dark for obvious reasons, but also because the crossover it had with 007. As for Conker's Bad Fur Day, I don't think I need to explain why it was my favorite game, but I would add this. I have never beaten the game or seen anyone do it. The last place I left off was on the Alien vs Predator mission, where I had to toss out the alien into space, but it kept coming back every time. Other games I played include the Mario Party games. Those are pretty cool. There were other games that I don't remember playing, but I saw other people playing, be they family get-togethers or the neighbors' houses. These include games like Star Fox, Donkey Kong, Bomberman, Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Stadium 2, Gax the Gecko, and the original Super Smash Bros. Now I know Super Smash Bros. was a pretty hot game, and a lot of people are into it, but for some reason I never really got into the franchise. I'm thinking of giving it a try sometime in the future, and see what it's about. And now it's Xbox time. My next memorable gaming experience after the Nintendo 64 was the original Xbox. And the first game I played on the Xbox was Halo Combat Evolved, or as I'd like to call it, Halo 1. It was actually a game demo disc that had a couple of other games included. One of the other games included were Spider-Man, Madden NFL, and the Hulk, if I remember correctly, but I never played any of those other games. The Halo mission that was on the demo disc was the Silent Cartographer. I don't remember who in my family got the demo disc or how. I looked into it years later, and apparently the demo disc came with a subscription to some gaming magazine. But anyways, I gave Halo 1 a try, because I thought it was going to be like 007 or Perfect Dark, as it was also a first-person shooter game. And I was impressed. I was hooked. I remember playing the same Silent Cartographer mission every night on the weekdays. I never got tired of it. I later found out there was a full version of Halo 1, and I was like, what? So later on, someone got hold of the game, and I played it as well. So that's enough of Halo 1. And yeah, I also played Halo 2. Great game as well. One of the other games I remember playing around the same time was Mad Dash Racing. And what else was there? There was also Kung Fu Chaos. Both really great games. After the Xbox, there was the Nintendo GameCube. The first game I remember playing was Pokemon Colosseum. It was my #1 game on the GameCube. I played it religiously. One of the memories I had playing it was beating the main game, beating Mount Battle, and capturing all of the Shadow Pokemon. I never got to purifying them all, however, and because of this I never got Ho-Oh. The whole purifying process took forever, so I just gave up. Other games I played were the Mario Party games, although my memory of playing those games is a bit fuzzy. One thing I vaguely remember from playing Mario Party was a mini game where you're in a sci-fi setting, and you're on a bumper car with turrets and you shoot lasers at the other players. I forgot what it was called and what Mario Party game it was from, just that it was on a GameCube. Besides that, I also like playing games that were based on movies and TV shows. Some examples include the SpongeBob SquarePants movie and Ice Age. The last game I remember playing was Pokemon XD Guild of Darkness. Like with Colosseum, I never got to purify all the Shadow Pokemon. It still took forever, even with the new purifying mechanics. And that's enough for GameCube. Let's talk about handhelds now. My first ever handheld console was the Game Boy Advance, and the first game I got for it was Pokemon Ruby. I actually remember this in great detail. I was at the mall with my mom one day in 2003. I went into an EB Games, and this is when EB Games was still around. Many of you guys probably don't remember, and in case you don't, EB Games was like GameStop, only slightly less popular, and it went extinct a lot sooner. But anyways, Pokemon Ruby was the game that got me into the franchise. I originally was not interested in Pokemon, but because it was popular among the neighborhood kids, I gave it a try. Ever since that day, I was hooked on Pokemon games, up until the current year, which is 2024. 2024 minus 2003, that's like 21 years so far? That's crazy actually, that I have been into the Pokemon franchise for that long. Not only that, but because it was the first game that was fully mine, because before that I shared games with family, I had to learn to play the game on my own, which if you think about it deeply, that may be kind of smart, to be able to figure out a game on your own as a kid. Anyways, I played every subsequent handheld Pokemon game ever since, with the exception of Black 2 and White 2. I skipped those games. I don't know why, it just is what it is. The other handheld that I owned was the PSP, aka the PlayStation Portable. This was my first PlayStation console experience. The PSP brings so many fond memories. I actually liked it more than a Game Boy. That's how good it was. The PSP was a pretty advanced and impressive handheld console for its time, which was 2005. It could do things like play music, TV shows, movies, store photos, browse the internet, all of that in addition to playing games. The UI looked pretty aesthetic, and games were in 3D for the first time in handheld history, so you could see why I was crazy for this thing. So I owned my first PSP in 2006, and if I remember correctly, the first game I got for it was SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. Other games I played include Need for Speed, The Simpsons, Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories and Liberty City Stories, Daxter, the God of War demo, and Ratchet & Clank demo. My next handheld console was the Nintendo DS Lite, and the first game I got for it was Pokemon Pearl. At this point I got enough experience playing Pokemon games, especially on the last gen with the Game Boy and GameCube. But what really enhanced the gaming experience with Pearl was the fact that Nintendo DS had a slot on the bottom of the console for Game Boy cartridges, which meant that I could pop in, for example, Pokemon Emerald and transfer some of my old Pokemon into Pearl through this new feature called Pal Park. It was like Safari Zone, but for your old Pokemon, and you can imagine which Pokemon I transferred over. No, really, imagine, because I don't have any memory of playing that game. It was a long time ago. Besides Pearl and the subsequent Pokemon games, I haven't played any other games on the DS. There were other games I wanted to play, but could not afford them. Later on, I got a hold of the Nintendo DSi. It was like the DS Lite, but a more beefed up version of it. Not only because it was a precursor to the more popular and successful Nintendo 3DS, unfortunately I never got to experience the DSi to the fullest because I only had one game for it, which was Pokemon White. Surprise, surprise. I wanted to try out the DSiWare, but I did not have money for Nintendo points. There was one app in particular that I wanted to get, which was Flipnote Studio. I don't remember if it was free, but regardless, I never got to use it. Basically, it was an app where you got to draw funny little cartoons and share them around. I remember seeing videos on the tube of cartoons made with Flipnote Studio, and I thought they were really cool. Besides that, I took some photos on the DSi because it had a camera. I think this was the first handheld console to have a built-in camera. The DSi also had a built-in microphone. I remember recording a bunch of random sounds and playing around with the audio editor. It was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I don't have the DSi anymore. I sold it to GameStop for credit, and it wasn't even that much. Looking back, I should have held on to it, keep it as a timeless treasure that I could look back on with fondness, but it's gone now. Now back to home consoles. Starting with the Nintendo Wii, this next console surprised me after the PSP. I feel like my life was like an episode of South Park and I am Eric Cartman, because the parallels are startling. And the first game I played was, of course, Wii Sports. I think this was the first console that came with a game bundled in. It was my favorite. I remember playing a lot of tennis and bowling. Those were my two most played sports in Wii Sports. I unfortunately did not play a lot of games on the Wii, but from what I do remember, I played Pokemon Battle Revolution, and that was it. I wanted to play more games on the Wii, but I couldn't afford them. And last but not least, the Xbox 360. I originally wanted a PS3, but that console was too damn expensive. It was $600 and the most expensive console at the time. If I had gotten the PS3, I wanted to play games like Killzone, Resistance, Fall of Man, and Ratchet & Clank. To this day, I still never got to play the PlayStation 3, and it's kinda hard to buy a used console at the moment. But I am still looking to give it a try, so maybe that will change in the future. Anyways, back to 360. If I remember correctly, the first game I played on that console was Fear, a first-person shooter, and my memory of that game is a little fuzzy as it was a long time ago, so it's hard to remember what I was doing in that game. I also never got to beat the game, as I only rented it. Besides Fear, I played a little bit of Gears of War. I didn't really like Gears of War because it was a third-person shooter game, and third-person shooters aren't my thing. Not only that, but there was no jumping mechanics, so I couldn't bunny hop. I also played a little bit of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. It was my first COD, but I didn't play much of it, just a little bit of campaign and split-screen multiplayer. I might be in the minority here, but I don't remember Call of Duty 4 with the fondness that a lot of other people do. I don't know why, but Call of Duty 4 just wasn't for me. Call of Duty World at War, however, was my game. World at War was the game that got me into the Call of Duty franchise. I especially loved the campaign. It had that dark and gritty atmosphere that future Call of Duties lacked. And of course, Nazi Zombies got me hooked. I remember one time playing zombie split screen with someone all night. A lot of losing and starting over because it was so addicting. The multiplayer was good too, and that was when I was playing online more regularly for the first time. And I cannot forget about the #1 Xbox 360 game of all time, Halo 3. I have been looking forward to it since the Halo 2 days, and I got really excited when I got to play it for the first time. And there you have it. I could go on about the other games I played on the 360, but you guys could already guess what those games were, and they're much closer to the modern era than my childhood, so I will leave it at that.